Marcos Jr., President of the Republic of the Philippines, presents this presidential citation to Alexandra Eala.
Alex Eala cries receiving presidential citation from Marcos, and for a suspended second inside the ceremonial hall of Malacanang Palace, nobody in the room seems to know where to look. It is the evening of July 13, 2026. The framed citation is in her hands. The President of the Philippines is standing beside her. And Alexandra Eala, 21 years old, ranked number 28 in the world, the highest a Filipino has ever climbed in professional tennis, is trying to steady her voice. She had told the room a moment earlier that she does not normally get nervous when she has to speak.
I normally do not get very nervous when I have to talk.
Tonight was the exception. Tonight she was, in her own word, nervous. The cameras catch it. Her eyes are glassy. Her breath is uneven.
Today is the exception. I am pretty nervous, so thank you.
Behind her, First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos watches quietly. Her mother, Riza, and her father, Mike, are seated a few feet away, and President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., whom she has just met, is smiling the way people smile when they realize the ceremony they organized is smaller than the person they organized it for. That number, 28, matters. 9 days earlier, on the grass of Wimbledon's center court, Eala had beaten the defending champion Iga Swiatek 7-6 in a tie-break that went to 9, then 6-2 in the second.
2 sets to love, 6-1, 6-2.
The noise will tell you.
She reached the round of 16, the first Filipino ever to go that deep at a Grand Slam. She lost the next match to Jasmine Paolini 6-4, 4-6, 6-3. She flew home. And within a week, her ranking was posted at a career-high number 28, and the president of her country had summoned her to the palace. Here is what the coverage keeps missing about what happened inside that hall. There was no template for it. The Philippines has honored boxers, weightlifters, and pool players before. It has never honored a tennis player at this altitude because it has never had one. And President Marcos, in a moment that most outlets flattened into a warm quote, admitted it out loud. You know, he told Eala, half-joking, we don't actually have a protocol for any of this. We just made it up so we'd have an excuse to take a picture with you. That line, more than the framed citation itself, is the entire story compressed. A head of state in his own ceremonial hall telling a 21-year-old that the ritual honoring her had to be improvised because her country had never produced someone whose achievements fit inside the existing forms. The presidential citation is a real formal state recognition. It exists. It has been given before. But the language used to give it to Eala, first Filipino woman to attain unprecedented success on the international professional tennis circuit, was drafted specifically for her because the phrase, first Filipino woman to do this in tennis, had never previously been written into a citation. The state was catching up to a career already in motion, and Eala, standing there in a room built for statecraft, was watching her country invent the shape of what to do with her. The evidence for how far she has traveled sits in 3 clusters, and each one tightens the significance of what unfolded on July 13th. Start with the Wimbledon fortnight itself. Eala arrived at the All England Club ranked outside the top 40 and left it ranked 28th. In between, she beat the world number 3 Swiatek on grass in straight sets on center court against a defending champion who had been the tournament's clear favorite. The scoreline, 7-6 in a 9-point tiebreak followed by 6-2, was verified by the WTA and covered by BBC Sport, Olympics.com, and every major Philippine outlet within hours. She then took Paolini, the Italian world number 17, to 3 sets in the round of 16 before losing 6-4, 4-6, 6-3 on the same center court. No Filipino, man or woman, had ever reached the 4th round of a Grand Slam before her. That fact appears in the presidential citation. The state chose the word unprecedented for a reason. Move to the second cluster, the ranking itself. Number 28 is not a spike. It is a plateau reached after 18 months of climbing. Earlier in 2026, at the ASB Classic in Auckland, Eala broke into the top 50 for the first time. She followed with a WTA 125 title at Guadalajara. her first, then a second WTA 125 title at Birmingham in June, defeating her doubles partner Nikola Bartunkova in the final. Her 2026 season record, according to the WTA's official player page, is 30 wins against 18 losses, with prize money for the year approaching $1.3 million. This is not the profile of an underdog having a moment. This is the profile of a top 30 player whose ceiling has not yet been located. And then there is the third cluster, which is where the ceremony stops being about tennis. Take a breath here, because the rest of what happened inside Malacanang did not belong to sport. It belonged to memory, and to a specific pair of shoes, and to a grandfather who never got to see any of this. In her speech, Eala turned away from the numbers. She spoke about her earliest coach, her late maternal grandfather, Roberto Bobby Maniego, whom she called Papa Lolo. She described training with him after school alongside her brother at the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex in Manila. And then she said the line that traveled fastest through Filipino social media within the hour. I went to train with my brother and my grandfather every day after school with my ruffled socks and my light-up shoes and chubby cheeks. That sentence, delivered in a room lit for state cameras, carried a private image into public property. The Philippine Star ran it as a headline. People Asia clipped it, Sports on Air MNL amplified it. Fans across social media reacted with a particular kind of intensity that arrives when an athlete makes a country feel something it did not expect to feel from a ceremony. She was not performing sentiment, she was placing the little girl she used to be beside the woman the president was honoring, and letting the room see the distance. President Marcos then spoke, and he did something a head of state rarely does. He dropped rank. I'm a fan, so I'm gushing, okay? I'm sorry. I'm a real fan of yours. That is a verbatim quote from the Presidential Communications Office release corroborated by the Inquirer, GMA News, and ABS-CBN. He continued, "And one day I hope I'll have the opportunity to watch you, even if it's not at a Grand Slam, at any tournament. Even just watching you practice would be enough." He praised in his prepared remarks the grace with which she handles success. "You have brought such pride to the Philippines, to the Filipinos, and not only because of your success, but also because the grace with which you handle that success. You show the greatest, best qualities of Filipinos." And then the line that framed the entire evening. "You have reminded Filipinos what a great race Filipinos are because we produce someone like you. We, all 110 million of us Filipinos, we are all behind you, willing you on to greater success. If there's anything that we can do to help you, just say so. You will have it." A pledge of state support delivered on camera entered into the public record. Marcos's authority to make that pledge is not in question. He is the head of state, and the presidential citation he conferred carries the formal weight of that office. But the citation itself, drafted for this occasion, is worth reading closely. Eala was cited in its own language in recognition of her historic achievements as the first Filipino woman to attain unprecedented success on the international professional tennis circuit, demonstrating exceptional talent, perseverance, and unwavering determination. She was cited for inspiring a new generation of Filipino athletes to pursue excellence through hard work, discipline, and dedication, and for bringing pride, honor, and joy to the Filipino nation. Every word in that citation was chosen. The Philippine Sports Commission chairman, Patrick Pato Gregorio, was in the room to witness it. Her agent, Carter Lynn, was there. Her parents, Mike and Riza, sat close. There is footage released by the Presidential Communications Office and mirrored by every major broadcaster of the president handing her the frame, and of the room applauding, and of Eala in that same suspended second the script opened with holding it and not quite knowing what to say. What a top 30 Filipina tennis player actually changes is not a soft question. It has structural answers. Tennis in the Philippines has historically sat outside the national athletic identity. Boxing has Pacquiao, weightlifting has Hidalin Diaz, basketball has decades of institutional infrastructure. Tennis has had promising juniors, occasional doubles finalists, but never a singles player who forced the WTA's official rankings page to display the Philippine flag next to a number this small. The downstream effects of that are not hypothetical. They show up in what parents tell their children about which sports are available to them. They show up in whether courts get resurfaced, whether academies get funded, whether the Philippine Sports Commission adjusts its budget lines. Marcos's on-camera pledge, "If there's anything we can do to help you, just say so," is the state opening a door that has not previously existed for a Filipino tennis player. Whether that pledge converts into concrete resources over the next 12 months is a separate story and one this channel will track. But the door is open on the record, and the door being open is itself the significance. A country that had no protocol for honoring a top 30 tennis player now has one. It is called Alex Eala. The arc that led to Malacañang did not run in a straight line. 6 months before the palace ceremony, in late January of 2026, Eala walked onto the courts of the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex, the same complex where her grandfather had first coached her, as the emotional headliner of the Philippine Women's Open, a WTA 125 event on home soil. She lost in the quarterfinal to Camila Osorio, 6-4, 6-something in the second set, per Just Women's Sports and GMA News. She had dedicated the tournament to Papa Lolo. Losing at the courts he taught her on in front of the country she was trying to make proud was reportedly one of the hardest moments of her early season. 6 months later, she stood in a state ceremonial hall, invoking those same courts by name in front of the president. That is not a redemption arc. It is a longer arc than that. It is what happens when a career has enough runway to survive its own setbacks. Which brings the story back to the frozen moment it opened with. The framed citation in her hands, her voice thickened. The president smiling because the ceremony he made up had turned out to be smaller than the person it was for. What Alex Eala represents at 21 is not a first or a milestone or an inspirational headline. Those framings are too small. What she represents is a country revising its own definition of what a Filipino athlete can look like, at what altitude, in what sport, and on what stage. The state made up a protocol for her because the existing forms did not fit. Number 28 is the highest a Filipino has ever climbed in professional tennis, and the ceiling has not been located yet. The light-up shoes she mentioned in her speech are, at this point, an object that has traveled from a Rizal Memorial practice court to a Malacañang microphone, carried by the same feet. And on July 27th, less than 2 weeks from the ceremony, she is scheduled to walk out at the Mubadala DC Open in Washington. The work continues. The next tournament is already on the calendar, but this time, she leaves for the road carrying more than a racket. She leaves carrying a citation drafted specifically for her, a country's promise of full support entered on the record, and the memory of a room that improvised its own ritual because she was standing in it. That is what she represents. That is the room she is in now. And if you want to watch what happens next, the DC Open, the US Open, the ranking she takes into the fall, subscribe and stay with us, because the story that started in a ceremonial hall on July 13th, 2026 is very far from finished.